with EAPPI from January to April of 2018. I was part of the Bethlehem team, and I had two teammates. I had Lucy from Switzerland and Sonia from Germany. To me, accompaniment simply means being present with others along the road and standing alongside them. I knew when I served as an EA that my presence in Bethlehem didn't change Palestinian reality in any measurable way, but I did believe that collectively, year after year, together we bring hope and we bring encouragement, and that through our advocacy, once we return home, we really can change American understanding and perspective on what is a very difficult and complex issue. Like most Americans, I believe I had no understanding at all of Palestinian reality prior to visiting Israel for the first time in 2016 as a tourist. But my transformation began on that trip with the inequality that I saw there, and with a chance encounter in a Jerusalem shop with a German woman who was there serving as an EA. And that transformation continued through the extensive reading and face-to-face training that is required by EAPPI before anybody departs to participate, and through the very balanced and thorough training that EAs receive once they arrive in Palestine, and then certainly through my day-to-day on-the-ground experience of life in Palestine. And I can safely say at this point that not one assumption that I once held about this land and the people who live there survives today. It is impossible to visit there and not be transformed. Generally on Sunday, which is the first day of the Palestinian work week, we monitored the checkpoint from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. when thousands of Palestinian men, and they are mostly men at that hour of the day, are trying to pass through to reach jobs on the other side. And it's a crowded, noisy, difficult, often chaotic scene, not a pleasant place to be. We also monitored the checkpoint generally on Fridays, later in the day, because it's on Friday that so many Palestinians are trying to pass through to worship. So on Fridays, it was more women and children. But yes, we were very, very familiar with checkpoint 300 in Bethlehem. In fact, our little flat that we lived in was a stone's throw from the checkpoint. We walked there in about 3 minutes to serve there. A lack of a shared language and the brevity of your time there as an EA, it is only 3 months, work against developing close personal relationships with most of the people that you meet. But Palestinians are remarkably hospitable, and I have never felt more welcomed anywhere than I did when I was living in Bethlehem. It was really a privilege every day to meet and to live among such resilient and generous people. We did, of course, develop closer relationships with the people that we worked most closely with, our landlords, George and Sylvia, our driver, Mohammed, and his uncle Nayef, and a local shopkeeper named Majdi. These were all people that we knew we could turn to with any sorts of questions or issues and when we needed advice. And finally, the relationships that you develop with your teammates are quite intense and very, very meaningful, and beyond your teammates with all the other EAs who are serving in your group. They come from all over the world. We spend a lot of time together in training, and some real friendships develop. I have said yes to every opportunity to speak about my experience there in churches and before whatever group would invite me. I also like to write, and so I've been able to share my experience through some personal essays that have appeared on several websites. But the most productive means of reaching people that I have found and hopefully broadening their understanding of the situation in Palestine has been through moderating non-credit courses at a couple of local universities. and moderating courses on this topic, I quickly discovered just how hungry Americans are to know more about it and how aware they are of how little they know about it. It's led to a lot of really interesting conversations and some really meaningful relationships, and has been the best way I've found to spread the word. I would not trade this experience for anything on earth. That I thought long and hard about it, prayed much about it before I did it. But to someone who's considering it, I would say if that's where the Spirit seems to be leading you, then don't be afraid to follow. I don't believe that you will ever regret the decision. I don't want to minimize how physically and emotionally and intellectually challenging it is to serve as an EA, but it was those very challenges that made it so rewarding for me. It is not an easy thing, but it is such a worthwhile thing. In any typical day, we would do 2 to 3 activities, and they almost always included monitoring outside schools as children were coming in the morning and going in the afternoon. So a typical day started with being picked up by Mohammed, our driver, at 7 a.m. And heading out to one of the 2 school compounds that we regularly monitored and listening to the Palestinian national anthem playing as it did every morning at 7 a.m. while we drove on what was usually a pretty lovely sunny morning to watch these little tykes up to high school kids, but the little ones with their backpacks as big as they were, all wanting to practice their English, what little they knew on the ladies in the vests. So that's how most days would begin. And then we would do other things. We would visit villages, meet with mayors and city council people, women's groups. We met with NGOs to learn more about the situation. And everywhere welcomed warmly. If I heard the words, "Welcome, you are welcome," once, I heard them hundreds of times during my time there. I think about this every day, but even 4 years later, it's just a very meaningful time in my life.
I serve as the EAPPI US National Coordinator with Church World Service. And I was an EA in 2007, and I served in a little village called Yanun. The Ecumenical Accompaniment Program in Palestine and Israel, or EAPPI, is a program founded in 2002 by the World Council of Churches in response to a call from the local heads of churches in Jerusalem. And this year is actually the 20th anniversary of EAPPI. People from around the globe are invited to come and bear witness to the injustice of the occupation. From March 2020 to January 2022, EAPPI was not able to have EAs on the ground due to COVID-related travel restrictions. In mid-January of this year, EAPPI welcomed the first group of EAs back on the ground, and they served through April. And now the second group is currently in place and actively monitoring freedom of movement and access to worship, education, farmland, and displacement and home demolitions and other human rights abuses. Almost all of the placement sites are open now, including Jerusalem, Bethlehem, South Hebron Hills, Hebron, and the Jordan Valley. The EAPPI staff team in Jerusalem includes field and security officers that support EAs in their day-to-day monitoring activities, a team facilitator that helps the team manage their group dynamics, and an advocacy officer that supports EAs in recording and sharing about what they witness. Recently, EAPPI had an assessment looking at the last 2 years during COVID when there were no EAs on the ground, and the results clearly show that the program is really important and that the lack of presence of internationals on the ground really impacts the community negatively. So with the program up and running, it's a good time to consider applying to be an ecumenical accompanier. To understand the commitment that you are engaging when you are an ecumenical accompanier, it's helpful to look at a deeper level and talk about the key principles of EAPPI's accompaniment model. The first is protective presence. EAs accompany Palestinian people and communities who are acutely affected by the occupation, including farmers, school children, people crossing checkpoints. Second, monitoring of human rights violations. When the presence of EAs cannot completely halt human rights violations, EAs are there to monitor and report the abuses. Third, standing with churches and local peace and human rights groups. EAs highlight and participate in activities of local churches and Palestinian and Israeli groups working for justice and peace. Fourth, advocacy. The goal of the program is a just peace and an end to the occupation. EAs campaign for public policy change, meet with members of Congress, write articles about their experience in Palestine and Israel, carry out speaking engagements in their home communities, and engage with grassroots advocacy initiatives in their community. Fifth, principled impartiality. EAPPI is not pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli. EAPPI is pro-human rights and international humanitarian law. Sixth, nonviolence. EAPPI believes nonviolence is the only way to a true and lasting solution to the conflict. The actions of EAs are nonviolent, and we support all people working nonviolently for peace in Palestine and Israel. On a practical level, as an ecumenical accompanier, you are committing to being on the ground for 3 months, where you will provide that protective presence alongside a team of people from other countries. And when you return home, your focus shifts to advocacy. You commit to reporting on your advocacy activities for 2 years after you get home. You share your firsthand experiences to inform people of the realities of the occupation and campaign for a just and peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on international law and UN resolutions. In terms of process, there are a series of steps in the approval process to be an ecumenical accompanier. As someone applying to become an ecumenical accompanier through the EAPPI US program, I'm going to walk with you through each step. We start with an initial phone call where you can ask any questions you have about the program. Then we have an interview with our EAPPI US steering committee. Then I'm going to send you a lot of reading that's going to cover everything from topics like international law to the practical pieces of day-to-day life as an EA. And then we have an orientation in DC. And it's after that final orientation that we give final approval. We have the orientation scheduled for about 6 weeks ahead of departure for Jerusalem, and we generally work with applicants 3 to 6 months before departure, and there's a lot of flexibility in that as well. If you're interested in applying to be an EA, you can email me at eappi-us@cwsglobal.org to receive all of those application documents. The cost to participate as an EA is about $13,000, and this covers the costs of the EAs as well as the management of the program in Palestine and Israel. This cost is covered by grants, by the EAs themselves, from fundraising, and from the generosity of people across the US. And so whether you're interested in applying to be an EA or support an EA, we would be happy for you to reach out to us.